The morning in Ouagadougou began like any other. Sunlight spilled across cracked rooftops. Children's laughter floated between alleyways. A rooster crowed too late, and the smell of charcoal fires drifted through the city like memory. But inside the presidential residence, something sacred was about to unfold. President Ibrahim Traoré stood by the window, still barefoot, holding a teacup he hadn't touched. His mind was far from governance. It was with the woman who raised him. A woman with no titles, no power, no education. Just a spine made of iron and hands that healed without medicine. His phone buzzed once, then again. He turned slowly, picked it up. Message from Tran. Urgent. He blinked. Tran. The message opened to an image. A letter written in beautiful Persian calligraphy. Beneath it, a plain translation. To President Ibrahim Traoré, I write to you not as a supreme leader, but as a man who remembers what it means to be shaped by invisible hands. I watched your speech about your country's women, about mothers who boiled water with no food in the pot, so their children would sleep, believing they had eaten. That speech moved something inside me I thought long buried. Decades ago I was fed and shaped by such a woman. In a quiet corner of Quam, she gave me faith when I had nothing else. I hear you had such a woman too. If you will allow me, I wish to visit her. Not as a politician, not as a guest, but as a man who still owes a thank you to his own past. Priznatsya Ali Khamenei. Ibrahim sat down. No words came from his mouth. No advisors dared speak. He just stared at the message, at the impossible name at the bottom. Ali Khamenei, the Supreme Leader of Iran. Writing to him not to criticize, not to command, but to remember. 3 days later, the tarmac at Ouagadougou airport held no press, no cameras. Only wind and a black-robed figure stepping down the stairs of a private plane. He moved slowly, aged but unwavering. Ali Khamenei had arrived, and waiting for him was no military parade, no presidential band, just Ibrahim Traoré standing alone under the open sky. His hand over his heart, the two men locked eyes. Then slowly they embraced not as heads of state, but as sons of women the world had long forgotten. They didn't speak much on the drive, just silence between them. Old dust kicking up behind their SUV, children waving from fields, goats running across roads, and somewhere in the back seat, an old envelope, the letter lay folded, still warm from being held. I did not think you'd come, Ibrahim finally said. I didn't either, Ali replied. But something about your words. They woke an old prayer inside me. They passed villages with rusted roofs and barefoot dreams. Ali looked out the window. These people, they carry something. What gratitude, he said, like a scent, old but holy. 2 hours later, the car slowed. In front of them, a tiny clay house with a thatched roof and one old tree leaning beside it like a tired elder. No guards, no fences, just a woman in a faded headscarf sweeping her yard with a handmade broom, singing to herself. Mama, Ibrahim whispered. Ali stepped out slowly. The woman looked up. She did not know who he was. Did not recognize the face on international headlines. Did not care. She whacked her hands on her dress and walked forward with the same poise she'd had when she walked. Barefoot to school as a girl with a book tied in cloth. This, Ibrahim said, his voice shaking, is the woman who raised me when my mother worked in the fields. Ali bowed his head and took her hand. He could not speak her language, but he didn't need to. He pressed her palm to his forehead, then whispered in trembling Farsi, You fed him and now he feeds a nation. You gave him silence and now he gives the world a voice. You are the forgotten root that bore the tree. She looked at him, and though she understood not a word, her eyes filled with tears. Some languages are written in the soul. She touched his cheek, and for the first time in decades, Ali Khamenei wept. Inside the house, the air smelled of dust, old tea leaves and memory. Ali walked through it like a cathedral. He touched the prayer mat in the corner, the photos taped to the wall, the chipped enamel cup stacked on a shelf made of tree bark. Then he saw the photo, a young Ibrahim, maybe 9, missing one shoe, but holding a pencil like it was a sword. She taught me to read, the president said. With only one book and only one match for light, Ali turned to Mama Kadi and quietly he said, Then the world owes you more than it knows. Later that evening, under a roof patched with hope, the three sat in silence, Ali, Ibrahim, and Mamagi. She poured tea with hands that had mended shirts. held feverish boys, and washed shame from the skin of generations. No marble walls, no velvet chairs, just a straw mat, chipped cups, and history unfolding. Ali sipped the tea slowly. He looked at Mama Kadi with a softness in his face the world rarely saw. "She reminds me of someone," he said to Ibrahim. "Your mother?" Ibrahim asked. Ali nodded. "No one knew her name, but she gave me the words I used to lead men." Mama didn't speak. She didn't understand the words, but her heart heard the truth in their tone. She simply placed her hand gently on his arm as if to say, "I understand." Then she stood and walked to a small wooden box in the corner. She lifted the lid and pulled out a faded cloth. Red thread stitching a child's name. "Ibrahim, my first cape," he said. "When I used to pretend I was a leader." Ali reached forward and touched it gently. "She made you believe." "No," Ibrahim said, "she made me remember." At dawn, they walked together to a crumbling school building made of cracked clay and laughter. "My grandmother's," he whispered. "She raised 9 children with 1 stove. When I first spoke in the seminary, I wore this in my pocket to remember what real strength looks like." Ibrahim's eyes softened. They sat in silence. 2 men, 2 scarves, 2 grandmothers who would never meet, and yet had shaped nations with nothing but love and iron patience. That night, Ibrahim sat at his desk going over architectural notes and plans. Ali stood behind him quiet. Then gently he said, "Tomorrow I must leave." Ibrahim looked up. "So soon?" Ali nodded slowly. "My people do not know why I came, and they will question it." "Let them," Ibrahim said. Ali smiled. "That's the difference between you and me. You are the storm. I am the mountain." Then he reached into his cloak, pulled out a sealed envelope. "I wrote something on the plane," he said, "in case I never returned here." Ibrahim took it slowly. "What is it?" "A letter for your people, for the world, and for her." He placed it into Ibrahim's hand, closed his fingers over it, and said, "Do not open it until the school is finished." A week later, the first bricks were laid. The Mama Kadi Center for Forgotten Children had no marble, no gold, no air conditioning, but it had shade, books, laughter, and the echo of 2 men who had once been boys with only dreams and dust. Ali had returned to Tehran. Ibrahim stood alone in the courtyard, watching children run barefoot over the dirt where his map had once been only ink and paper. Mama Kadi sat in the shade of a mango tree folding laundry. Then one morning, she didn't rise. She didn't sweep the clay floor, didn't hum her morning prayer, didn't answer when the neighbor's baby cried. The village knew. They gathered quietly outside her home. Ibrahim came first on foot. No guards, no suit, no protocol. He entered the small room. She lay on her mat, peaceful, her scarf folded at her feet, a smile still on her face. He sat beside her, took her hand and whispered, "You gave me everything and never asked for anything back." He wept, not like a leader, like a boy. The funeral was silent. Women wore white. Children carried flowers. No politicians were invited. Only one piece of music played, a lullaby she used to sing to Ibrahim when he was sick. At the end, Ibrahim stepped forward, held the scarf she left behind, and then for the first time, he opened the envelope Ali had given him. Inside was a single page in Persian with a translation underneath. It read to the child who became a lion, "If you are reading this, then the woman who fed your strength has returned to the soil she came from. Do not mourn too loudly. She would not want that. Instead, build, teach. Hold the hands of other forgotten children and tell them what she once told you. You are not forgotten. You are not poor. You are not alone. You are the beginning of something bigger than anyone can see." Signed, a man from across the mountains who finally found peace in her eyes, Ali Khamenei. Ibrahim folded the letter, tucked it into the pocket of his chest, and said nothing. She would not want that. Instead, build, teach. Hold the hands of other forgotten children and tell them what she once told you. You are not forgotten. You are not poor. You are not alone. You are the beginning of something bigger than anyone can see. Signed, a man from across the mountains who finally found peace in her eyes, Ali Khamenei. Ibrahim folded the letter, tucked it into the pocket of his chest, and said nothing. Some moments are too sacred for sound. News of Mama Kot's passing spread slowly at first, but by nightfall it had crossed borders, not because governments announced it, but because a child in a classroom whispered her name during roll call and refused to erase it from the chalkboard. In Iran, a candle was lit at a mosque with no cameras. At a seminary in Calm, a group of students gathered around a handwritten note posted on the wall. She never ruled, she never preached, but she'd changed the hearts of two men who changed the course of nations. The note was signed simply, AK in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim stood before the nearly completed Mama Kadi Center. The first class had already begun. 30 girls barefoot and radiant, reading books under trees, their voices lifting the dust like hymns. He stepped forward with a scarf in his hand, her scarf. He placed it inside the school's cornerstone, wrapped around a copy of the letter from Ali. "This building is not just stone," he said to the children. "It is the sound of her sweeping in the morning. It is the breath of her prayers when we had no bread. It is her laugh, soft but strong enough to shake history." That same week, without announcement or translation, Ali Khamenei released a final public address. He stood in a garden, birds chirping, no podium, just sky. And he said with quiet tears, "We wait for great leaders and forget the ones who raised them. I once believed that influence was a speech, a stage, a signature. But I have now seen that the greatest revolutions happen at the hands of a woman who says nothing, who asks for nothing and gives everything." Then he paused. "This week I lost a sister I never met. Her name will not be written in policy, but it will be written in me." And with that he turned and walked away from the camera. No ending, no anthem, just truth. A statue stood quietly in the village. Not marble, not bronze, just clay and stone. It showed a woman holding a broom in one hand and a book in the other. No crown, no title. The plaque below read, "Mama Kadi, the first teacher of the lasting nation." Visitors came from all over Africa. Some brought letters. Some brought soil from their mothers' graves. Some simply knelt and wept. In Hollywood, an actor named Denzel Washington posted a single photo, a scarf folded on a wooden table, with the caption, "I never met her, but she raised me too." In silence, the world began to remember the people we forget. And in Thrawn, as the sun set over the ancient rooftops, Ali Khamenei sat alone in prayer, the only item on the floor beside him. A faded drawing of a school and a photo of a smiling woman he never met. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Mother of Strength. You reminded me of who I was, of who I must still become."